Good morning. I like that commercial. All right, so this is my wargaming for 1/7, and let's get after it. All right, starting on the daily candle. Right, we are above previous month 50, waiting on NFP Friday this Friday. Right, so we're going to start with candle science, taking what we did on Monday and Tuesday, and giving us the probabilities of the open, high, low, close of today. Right, so we're going to come over here. We're going to log in. We're going to come to candle science. Right, we're going to put in, make sure that we are on NQ on the daily time frame, and we can do this on any time frame. That's the fun part about it. All right, put in the variables of yesterday. We know yesterday took out previous day high. We know that we closed above previous day high, so this was a close above previous day high. So we see right out the gate that the probabilities was 81% above yesterday's high. We knew this at settlement yesterday when we were doing reengineering, right? So now, right, we're going to get our targets, our data targets. So this yellow line represents previous day high. This is the 30th percentile at 0.25, the 50th is at 0.43, and the 70th percentile is at 0.72. So we're going to draw that on our charts for realistic expectations. Right, off of previous day high, we see that 0.34 is right here. Right, and we know that only 30% of data reversed before this, based off this candle sequence, which has happened 880 times on the daily candle. So we know that 30% reversed before hitting at 0.25. So let me readjust this because I had 0.3 is 0.25, so right there. Right, the 50th percent, 50% of the reversals have happened by 0.43. So we're going to draw that out. We know that this is the highest probability reversal zone, and from the 50% to the 70th percentile is at 0.72. So we can start seeing the spread between the 50th, the 30 to the 50, and the 50th to the 70th. So we know that this is more of an anomaly location. All right. So we knew that there was an 81% probability based off of Monday and Tuesday of taking out previous day high. We did that overnight. All right. So now we're going to figure out what's the probability of us closing. All right. There's only a 44% probability of us closing above previous day high. So that means there is a 56% probability of closing below previous day high and a 44% probability of closing above it. All right, so now what we want to do is see what the probability of us closing below previous day settlement is. We can see that there's a 57% probability of us closing above it. So if we had a longer wick between yesterday's high and settlement, that would be the ideal spot for close from a probability standpoint. All right. So now we see right now that there's only a 21% probability of taking out the low. Now, if we get below previous day mid, that's alerting us that we'll more than likely touch this opening price from previous day. That opening price, and it's pretty obvious today that it'll be pretty obvious, but on these tighter range days, that opening price is a significant, event. So if we touch that opening price, we can see, right, we get below it, but the probabilities of that low get increased, and the probabilities of the high still increase, but not as high, right? We know that we took out the previous day high, so we can select that. Right, and that gives us more accurate feed on our closing prices. So there's actually more probability to close above previous day high, above 54 after we've taken out the previous day high based off of what Monday and Tuesday has done. All right, so now we have pretty good awareness that between the close or above previous day high, that's the highest probability for the close. So we expect to come up here and get some continuation to the upside. All right. Now moving on, weekly, right? We know we've hit our 86% probability. We've hit our 78% probability. And now we're seeing, does price want to hit the 73% probability, which is at 1.5 from our weekly level, right? We know that as long as we're above Sunday and Tuesday, we're locking this in as a low of the week. And then from a statistical standpoint, right? We know that we didn't get much. If this is the low of the week, it's a shallow MAE to deep MFE, not a MAE to MFE, right? Let's see what the realistic expectation of that is. Right. So looking at the weekly, we can see that the current low of the week on a Sunday over the last year, that's where our mode is. Right here, that 9, that's the mode for the weekly low or the MAE. You can be a weekly high or a low, right? The MAE. So open, high, low, close. Right? If the weekly candle is like this, we'll say it's a green one. Right? The MAE would be from the open to that low. And then the MFE would be to the high, right? That's so if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say MAE, MFE, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so based off what Tokyo did, based off what Frankfurt did, we had trending downward markets, right? So Tokyo markets sold it, London and Frankfurt markets sold it, and we broke along, right? So turn that off right now. Let's go over to the daily profiler and see what the probabilities are based off of what sessions did overnight. So then we know we went short, true, none, short, true, broken, and we went long. So we know that there's an 81% probability of coming back up to Asia. Right, Asia OU is right here where Globex and settlement is, right there is the midline of this fixed constant range. Right, so we want to see, do we go up to these high probability levels and then reject it to make a new low? Right, we want to be able to see where, or is this high of the day, like statistics based off of what probabilities show us. So we can see that there's more likelihood of us going false for New York 1, meaning we take the other side of this 730 to 830 rock box. But now we have to figure out when is it going to happen and then define the conditions of if this happens, how do I know the difference between it turning false and capturing the reversal of this 4 hour, or is it going to be continuation and we just continue up, right? Probabilities say from the open candle sense that we continue up and this be a long true day, right? But let's see. So if we go false, right, we know that number one, that Asia drops, especially from a time standpoint. So that is, if we can't do the 4-step reversal, right, it will be a long true. And that's where that Asia OU gets targeted and the probabilities increase. If we get the 4-step reversal between 9:30 and 10:15, right, then we know we went false and that probability needs to go out the window. Coming to the other levels that sit right there, settlement, Globex open, midnight, midnight's right here, and it's already been hit, so that's accounted for. But if we look at settlement and Globex open, between 8 and 11 of them getting hit, we can see that Globex open has a 64% probability and primarily getting hit from 9:30 to 9:45. Settlement has a 60%. And then if we look at it by day of the week, we can see it jumps up to 75 when we incorporate settlement fill on a Wednesday, right? With 25% level being at 100, 50% being at 83, 75 and 100 being at 75%. So there's a good likelihood that we do reach up there. All right. So now let's look at the high day, low day, right? All right. With nothing selected, that 1800, just based off of what has already happened, that 1800 is a high probable high of the day. But if we look right, we can see it is met with the same level of statistics for a low of the day. I mean, for the end of day, high of day, right? Smooth operator, those are my English bulldogs. Right, I have two of them, and they are on everything I do. You're going to hear the snoring in the background. Back to this. So we know right now we have to define the two possible situations that can happen. We break out and we stay long above the 730 to 830, which would be a true side. And then the false would be the other, breaking out to the upside like we have, and then taking the other side. That's why the 4-step reversal is critical in identifying, because we have daily momentum telling us probabilities are that we continue higher, which would support the long true. But from an intraday standpoint, and based off of London and Tokyo, we can expect the drop and then bounce, right? So we're just trying to get the breadcrumbs of what's happening. So if we go false, that 1800 definitely is the high of the day, right? If we stay true, we know that that high of the day will come at the end of the day, right? Our current low of the day is supported at 420, or you can even say if we see data around 5-6 o'clock, we can support that because we came down, right? So let's see what that looks like. Do we have data to support a low of the day at that time? As you can see right here, between 4:30, so that's 3, 6, about 20% sits between 4 and 6, right? So there is data there, but it's not the dominant data, right? Your mode to median for low of the day is happening in RTH, right? But if we go false, right, we know that that low of the day will come. That high of the day will be supported at 1800, and the low of the day will come either in late morning or in the day, right? If we stay true, right, that data, that current low of the day is supported by data. All right. So let's put on our high day, low day for both long false and long true. All right. Starting with long false, our mode to median. So false is 1.2 to 1.6, which is pretty significant, which is why I don't think it will happen, because that usually comes off of news, and there's no real news in the market right now. And we said that that would be between 9:30 and 1600. We're not going to try to pinpoint the time because it's not obvious, right? When it's obvious, like all the data is clustered by a certain time, but when it's like this, where it's clustered, the reds are the low of the day. Like I don't try to get fancy with the times. And then high of the day, 1800, 0.1 to 0.3. 0.1 is 0.3. And then we know that 1800 is dominant time data to 1900, right? To consider that. Right, so right here to right there. That's for a long false, right? And that puts us below previous day low. Problem is, do we have any news out there to expand volatility that high? Right, for us to do that, from this high day to low of the day, volatility has to expand. And right now, the 10-day median range is 230, so this is unlikely, right? If we do true, you can see that the low of the day is mode to median is from 0.3 to 0.9 off of Globex Open. And then the low of the day time will be from 6:45 to 8. That's mode to median, right? And then let's do our higher day. Higher day mode to median is from 0.3 to 0.6. And then higher the day data stands out at power hour, so 1500 to 1600. All right, so let's look at what that would look like. So this is more reasonable. As you can see, our low of the day time for a long true incorporates from a price standpoint where our current low of the day is, and from a time standpoint. From a volatility standpoint, right, if we look at our 10-day median range, which is at 230, right, we can take that low of the day and go all the way up to high of the day. So that stands out and that supports the candle science. So remember we said on candle science, using open, high, low, close to collect MFE, this is around 25,916. 25,916 is where our high of the day is. So that's a stacked probability. All right, so now let's define how we determine, like we know that we use a 730 to 830 box, right? And once we break out, we know that there's only two possible scenarios that you can do between 830 and 1130. So we broke out to the long side first, right? So it can either by 1130 grab the other side of that, or it cannot grab the other side of that, and we just continue higher. That's the difference between the long true and the long false. And so how do we determine which way it's going? We do something called the 4-step reversal between 9:30 and 10. This is the 9 o'clock hour. This is the high. This is the mid. This is the low. And as it is forming, this will represent the 9:30 candle. Right? Step 1, can we get below 9:30? Step 2, can we get below 9 o'clock's 50%? Step 3, can 10 o'clock take out the 9 o'clock low? And step 4, can we put an instat high in Q1 of 10 o'clock? Now, that doesn't mean we wait for all 4 of those steps to place trades. We just know that we will position size as a reversal, because if we get these 4 steps right, this pivot will be the major pivot for New York 1, or for the morning session, and possibly the rest of the day of the RTH. So we want to be able to identify that, because if we do the false scenario and we can identify the reversal correctly, the high of the day is in, and we know that there's still plenty of distro to leech off of that information to take proper trades. All right, so moving on, right? Trade plan is going to be long in the 9:30 up to this level. Right, we're either going to reject right here, right now, London OU midnight and P12 mid, like we are doing, and then we're going to go false and start heading below the previous day mid, etc. Or we're going to keep going up, and we'll do the reversal where these probabilities are. But remember, that's not, so that would support the false, which would be boom, and then boom, or we net up here and then go down, right? Which is definitely a possibility, right? As long as for 9:30, I'm going to trade it. If it breaks out to the upside, I'll try to take the long, and I'll target extended targets up to here, and then that level with the high of the days, and then I'll use 10 o'clock to add to that position, or 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and turn on cap and back test to the upside to add to that position, right? If we do go long true. But if we get that 4-step reversal, right, then I'll have to turn on shorts only and models that have to associate with shorts, because what we know is if we go long false, right, we put that major pivot in at 9:30, we know that we're not going to trust the quarters, and we're going to expect a range between 10 and 11, right? So we might have to turn on range style trades if we do go false. If we go true, it'll be more of a trend-like model, and then we go into that range between 10:30 to 11, and then continue up in the afternoon session. So that's pretty much my wargaming analysis for today. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm planning. Right now, it looks like we want to go false, but we also know that we like to put the major pivot more times between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, not pre-market. So this little pullback that we're seeing right now, I'm not going to place any trades, get head fake. I would if it was in the direction of midnight, but midnight's already been touched. That's the only pre-market trade I take. between 8 and 9:30. So I'll be patient and wait for 9:30 to show us handed placing these trades. That's what I got. Hopefully it was helpful. Later, haters.